Hashtag the hook. Sometimes the people we trust the most are hiding the biggest secrets. Sometimes the person we look down on holds the key to our entire world. And sometimes one moment of anger can shatter everything we thought we knew about our lives. In the heart of Beverly Hills, where million-dollar mansions line the streets and luxury cars sit in every driveway, appearances mean everything. But behind the perfect facades, behind the designer clothes and fake smiles, real lives are being lived. Real hearts are breaking. Real secrets are being kept. This is a story about prejudice and pride, about assumptions and truth, about a woman who thought she had everything figured out until one slap changed her life forever. It's about the maid she never really saw, the husband she thought she knew, and the child who connected them all in ways no one could have imagined. What happens when the life you've built on judgment comes crashing down? What happens when the person you've treated as invisible turns out to be the most important person in your world? And what happens when your husband has been keeping a secret so big, so shocking, that it will make you question everything you thought was true? This is that story. And it begins on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, when nothing seemed different, when the sun was shining through expensive windows, when a rich woman's hand connected with a black maid's face, and when a truth 25 years in the making was finally about to come out. Are you ready to discover what really happened? Are you ready to see how one family's perfect life was built on lies? Are you ready for the shocking truth that will change everything? Then, let's begin. The morning started like any other Tuesday in the Morrison household. The sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Beverly Hills mansion, casting golden light across the white marble floors. Victoria Morrison stood in her walk-in closet, which was larger than most people's bedrooms, deciding which designer outfit to wear for her lunch date with the ladies from the country club. At 42 years old, Victoria was everything society expected her to be. Tall, blonde, perfectly maintained through expensive treatments and personal trainers. She wore her wealth like armor, each piece of jewelry, each designer label a reminder to the world that she had made it. She had climbed from her middle-class upbringing in Ohio to become the wife of one of Los Angeles's most successful commercial real estate developers. And she never let anyone forget it. Downstairs in the kitchen, Grace Williams moved quietly through her morning routine. At 58, Grace had worked as the Morrison family's housekeeper for the past 3 years. She arrived every morning at 6, let herself in through the service entrance, and began the careful work of maintaining the Morrisons' perfect home. Grace was a woman of few words, always professional, always respectful, always keeping her head down and her thoughts to herself. Grace had learned long ago that in homes like this, it was better to be invisible. Rich people didn't want to see their help as real people with real lives. They wanted efficiency, silence, and someone to clean up their messes without complaint. So that's what Grace gave them. She scrubbed their toilets, washed their dishes, picked up their discarded clothes, and pretended not to hear the arguments that sometimes erupted behind closed doors. But there was one person in the Morrison household who always saw Grace. 7-year-old Emma Morrison had taken to the quiet housekeeper from the very first day. While Victoria was always busy with her social obligations, and her husband James worked long hours at the office, Emma often found herself in Grace's gentle company. Grace never minded. In fact, she looked forward to the little girl's questions and stories. Emma would sit at the kitchen counter doing her homework while Grace prepared dinner, chattering about her day at school, her friends, her dreams. Sometimes Grace would hum old songs while she worked, and Emma would ask about them. And Grace would share little pieces of her life, carefully edited, nothing too personal. Victoria didn't like it. She had told Grace multiple times that she was there to clean, not to socialize with Emma. But the little girl was persistent, and Grace, despite her best efforts to maintain professional distance, found it impossible to be cold to such a sweet child. There was something about Emma that reminded Grace of someone. Something in her eyes, in her smile, in the way she tilted her head when she was thinking. On this particular Tuesday morning, Grace was in the living room, carefully dusting the expensive art pieces that Victoria had collected over the years. Most of them were chosen by an interior designer to match the color scheme rather than for any real appreciation of art. Grace handled each piece with care nonetheless, knowing that to Victoria, Their monetary value was all that mattered. She heard the click of expensive heels on the marble floor and knew Victoria was coming. Grace kept her eyes down, focusing on her work. Grace, I need you to make sure Emma's bathroom is spotless today, Victoria said without greeting. We have potential buyers coming to tour the model homes this afternoon, and James might bring them by the house. Everything needs to be perfect. Yes, ma'am, Grace replied softly. Victoria looked at her for a moment, and Grace could feel the assessment in that gaze. It was the same look Victoria gave to furniture she was considering replacing. And please try to stay out of sight if they do come by. I'd prefer if they didn't see the help. Grace's jaw tightened slightly, but she kept her expression neutral. Of course, ma'am. Victoria swept away, leaving a trail of expensive perfume in her wake. Grace stood there for a moment, breathing slowly, reminding herself that she needed this job. At her age, good positions were hard to find. And the Morrisons paid well, even if the emotional cost was sometimes high. The morning passed in its usual routine. Grace moved through the house like a ghost, cleaning, organizing, erasing any sign that real people lived in this showcase home. Around 11, she heard Emma's voice calling from upstairs. Grace, Grace, where are you? Grace smiled despite herself. She made her way upstairs to find Emma in her bedroom, struggling with her hair. Mom left for her lunch thing, and I can't get my ponytail right for my dance class. Let me help you, sweetheart, Grace said, gently taking the hairbrush. She had told Emma many times to call her Mrs. Williams, but the little girl insisted on using her first name, and Grace had given up correcting her. As Grace brushed Emma's soft brown hair, so different from Victoria's platinum blonde, she felt that familiar tug in her chest. The feeling she tried not to examine too closely. Emma leaned back against her, comfortable and trusting, and Grace's hands trembled slightly as she secured the ponytail with an elastic. There you go, all set for dancing. Thank you, Grace. You're the best. Emma turned and hugged her impulsively. I wish you were my grandma. You're so much nicer than my real grandma. Grace stiffened, gently but firmly setting Emma back. That's not appropriate to say, Emma. I'm sure your grandmother loves you very much. But she's always busy, and she smells like mothballs, Emma said with the brutal honesty of childhood. You smell like cookies, and you actually listen to me. I need to get back to work, Grace said, more sharply than she intended. She saw the hurt flash across Emma's face and immediately regretted her tone. I'm sorry, honey. I just have a lot to do today. Emma nodded, but her smile had faded. Grace left the room, her heart heavy. She had been careful, so careful, but moments like this made it harder. Made her forget why she had to maintain distance. Made her forget the rules she had set for herself when she took this position. By early afternoon, Grace had finished most of her tasks. She was in the laundry room, folding Victoria's delicate designer clothes with practiced care when she heard the front door open. James Morrison's voice carried through the house, deeper and warmer than his wife's clipped tones. Emma, Princess, I'm home early. Grace heard Emma's delighted squeal and the sound of small feet running. She smiled. Whatever else could be said about the Morrisons, James clearly adored his daughter. He was a different kind of wealthy than his wife. James had grown up with money, old California money, but it had never made him cruel. He was always polite to Grace, always said please and thank you, occasionally asked about her day as if he actually cared about the answer. Victoria had returned from her lunch and wasn't pleased about James coming home early. Grace could hear the tension in her voice even from the laundry room. I thought you had meetings all afternoon. I canceled them. I wanted to spend time with my daughter. Is that a crime? You're going to spoil her. She's 7 years old, Victoria. She's supposed to be spoiled a little. Grace tried not to listen, but the laundry room was off the kitchen, and voices carried. She had learned more about the Morrison marriage than she ever wanted to know over the past 3 years. She knew that Victoria had married James for his money and connections. She knew that James had married Victoria because she was beautiful and looked perfect on his arm at business events. She knew that somewhere along the way, whatever affection might have existed between them had curdled into resentment. The only thing they seemed to agree on was Emma, though even there, their approaches differed. Victoria wanted Emma to be perfect, a reflection of her own success. James just wanted Emma to be happy. Grace finished the laundry and moved on to preparing dinner. Victoria had left a note requesting salmon with asparagus, despite the fact that Emma hated both. James would probably end up ordering pizza for himself, and Emma, after Victoria picked at her food, and retired early with a headache and a glass of wine. She was seasoning the salmon when Emma wandered into the kitchen. "Grace, can you help me with my homework? Dad's on a work call, and Mom says I'm bothering her." Grace wanted to say yes, wanted to sit down, and help this little girl who seemed to need someone to just pay attention to her. But she remembered Victoria's warnings, remembered her place. "Why don't you try it on your own first? And if you're still stuck when your dad gets off the phone, ask him." Emma's face fell. "You're acting weird today. Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. I just have work to do." Emma lingered in the doorway, clearly wanting to say something more. But then she heard her father's office door open and ran toward his voice. Grace exhaled slowly, gripping the edge of the counter. This was getting harder. She had thought she could do this, thought she could be in this house, around this child, and keep her emotions locked away. But Emma was making it impossible. Every smile, every hug, every moment of trust was chipping away at Grace's carefully constructed walls. The afternoon passed tensely. Victoria was in one of her moods, finding fault with everything. The cushions on the couch weren't arranged properly. There was a water spot on the bathroom mirror. The towels in the guest bathroom weren't folded the way she liked. Grace fixed each issue without comment, her face a mask of professional calm, even as anger simmered beneath the surface. This was part of the job. Victoria's need to exert power over someone, anyone, because in her real life, her husband ignored her and her friends only tolerated her for her husband's money and her party planning skills. Around 5 in the evening, Grace was vacuuming the upstairs hallway when she heard raised voices from the master bedroom. She turned off the vacuum, not wanting to intrude, but the voices grew louder. "I saw the credit card bill, Victoria. $30,000 at Neiman Marcus? In 1 month. We can afford it. That's not the point. You have a closet full of clothes you've never worn. This is getting out of control. Maybe if you paid more attention to me instead of spending all your time at the office or doting on Emma, I wouldn't need to shop. So this is my fault. Your shopping addiction is my fault." Grace quietly rolled the vacuum away, not wanting to hear more. But as she passed Emma's room, she saw the little girl sitting on her bed, hands over her ears, tears streaming down her face. Without thinking, Grace went in and sat beside her. Emma immediately collapsed against her, crying into her shirt. Grace wrapped her arms around the child, murmuring soft comfort, rocking her gently. "Why do they always fight?" Emma whispered. "Sometimes adults have disagreements, sweetheart. It's not your fault. It feels like it's my fault. Dad says Mom resents how much time he spends with me." Grace's heart broke. No child should hear such things. No child should feel responsible for their parents' failing marriage. She held Emma tighter, wishing she could take away her pain, wishing she could do more than just be there in these stolen moments. They sat like that for several minutes, until Emma's tears subsided. Grace wiped the little girl's face with gentle hands, and Emma looked up at her with such trust, such affection, that Grace had to look away. "I love you, Grace," Emma said simply. "I know you're not my grandma, but sometimes I pretend you are." Grace's throat tightened. "I care about you too, Emma. Very much." "Then, why do you keep pulling away from me? Why won't you let me hug you or talk to you like I used to?" "Because it hurts too much," Grace thought. "Because every moment with you is a reminder of everything I lost. Because I'm afraid of what will happen if I let myself love you the way I want to." But she couldn't say any of that. So instead she said, "I'm just trying to be professional, sweetheart. Your mother doesn't like us spending too much time together. My mother doesn't like anything that makes me happy," Emma said with surprising bitterness for a 7-year-old. Before Grace could respond, Victoria's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Emma, dinner in 10 minutes. Go wash your hands." Grace stood quickly, straightening her uniform. Emma hugged her once more before running off to the bathroom. Grace took a deep breath, steadying herself, and went back downstairs to finish preparing the meal that she knew would end in another argument. Dinner was exactly as unpleasant as Grace had predicted. Victoria picked at her food, making passive-aggressive comments about James's work schedule. James tried to engage Emma in conversation about her day, while Victoria complained that Emma needed to learn better table manners. Emma sat quietly, pushing her asparagus around her plate, looking miserable. Grace served and cleared in silence, a ghost at her own employment. When the meal was finally over and Grace had cleaned the kitchen, she prepared to leave for the day. Her small apartment across town waited, quiet and empty, but at least there she could breathe without wondering if she was crossing some invisible line. As she gathered her things from the small staff room off the kitchen, she heard footsteps. James appeared in the doorway. "Grace, do you have a moment?" "Of course, Mr. Morrison." He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "I wanted to apologize for the tension today. My wife and I have been going through a difficult time, and I know it affects the whole household." "It's not my place to comment, sir. I also wanted to thank you for being kind to Emma. She talks about you constantly. You've been good for her." Grace didn't know what to say to that. She settled for a simple, "She's a lovely child." "She is." James smiled, but there was sadness in it. "I worry about her. Victoria and I, we're not exactly providing the most stable home environment. But at least she has you." There was something in the way he said it, something that made Grace's pulse quicken. Did he know? Was it possible that he had figured it out? No, she told herself firmly. She was being paranoid. There was no way he could know. "I should go," Grace said, perhaps too quickly. "My bus will be here soon." "Of course. Have a good evening, Grace." She left through the service entrance, as she always did, and walked the 3 blocks to the bus stop. As she sat waiting, watching expensive cars drive past, she thought about Emma's tears, about Victoria's cruelty, about James's sad smile. She thought about the secret she had carried for 25 years. The secret that had brought her to this house, to this family, to this impossible situation. The secret that got heavier every single day. Grace had come to the Morrison household with a purpose. She had a reason for Bay Wednesday morning arrived with unexpected rain, unusual for Los Angeles in late spring. Grace stood at the bus stop, watching the water run down the shelter's roof, thinking about how rain always seemed to come before something changed. She had no reason to feel uneasy, but the feeling persisted as she made her journey to the Morrison house. She let herself in at 6 as always, shaking off her umbrella, hanging her worn coat on the hook in the service entrance. The house was still dark and quiet. This was Grace's favorite time. These early morning hours when she had the mansion to herself, when she could move through rooms without the weight of Victoria's judgment or the pain of keeping distance from Emma. Grace started the coffee maker, knowing James would be down by 6:30. She wiped down the kitchen counters, already spotless from yesterday, but routine was comfort. Routine was safety. As long as she followed the same patterns, as long as she stayed in her lane, everything would be fine. The coffee finished brewing just as she heard James's footsteps on the stairs. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed in his expensive suit, looking tired. Grace poured him a cup without being asked, added the one sugar he preferred, and set it on the breakfast bar. "You're an angel, Grace," he said, taking a grateful sip. "I don't know what we'd do without you." There it was again, that strange note in his voice. Grace busied herself with breakfast preparations, pulling eggs and bread from the refrigerator. "Just doing my job, sir. It's more than that, and you know it." James sat down heavily on one of the bar stools. "Emma asked me last night if you could come to her dance recital next month. She wants you there more than her own grandmother." Grace's hands stilled. "That wouldn't be appropriate, Mr. Morrison." "Why not? You're more family to her than most of our actual family." He paused, studying her. "You've been with us for 3 years now, and I realize I know almost nothing about you. Do you have children of your own, Grace?" The question hit like a punch to the stomach. Grace kept her back turned, cracking eggs into a bowl with hands that wanted to shake. "I had a daughter. She passed away many years ago." The lie came easily now. She had told it so many times that sometimes she almost believed it herself. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." James's voice was thick with genuine sympathy. "How old was she?" "Very young. I'd rather not talk about it if that's all right." "Of course. I apologize for bringing up painful memories." Grace whisked the eggs more vigorously than necessary, using the motion to steady herself. She had almost slipped. After 3 years of careful distance, of maintaining her story, James's simple kindness had nearly broken through her defenses. She served him his breakfast and retreated to the other side of the kitchen, beginning her cleaning routine. James ate in silence, occasionally glancing at his phone, the Wall Street Journal spread beside his plate. Grace had learned his patterns too. He read the business section first, then sports, then would skim the front page news before heading to his office. This morning, though, he seemed distracted. He pushed his half-eaten eggs around the plate and, finally, spoke. "Grace, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sir. Do you think I'm a good father?" The question surprised her into looking directly at him. James's face was troubled, genuinely seeking an answer. Grace chose her words carefully. "You love Emma very much. That's clear to anyone who sees you together. But am I enough? Is my love enough to make up for?" He gestured vaguely upward, toward where Victoria was presumably still sleeping. "Everything else. Children need love, attention, and security," Grace said softly. "You give her those things. That matters more than you might think." James nodded slowly, seeming to draw some comfort from her words. He finished his coffee, grabbed his briefcase, and headed toward the garage. At the doorway, he turned back. "Thank you, Grace, for everything. You don't know how much you helped this family." After he left, Grace stood in the silent kitchen, her own words echoing in her mind. Children need love, attention, and security. She had given up all three for her child, had convinced herself it was the right choice, the only choice. But watching Emma grow up with parents who were physically present but emotionally absent, Grace sometimes wondered if she had been wrong about everything. The morning passed in its familiar rhythm. Grace cleaned bathrooms, vacuumed carpets, dusted surfaces that didn't need dusting. Around 9, she heard Victoria's alarm go off, followed by the sound of the shower. Grace made herself scarce, knowing Victoria preferred not to encounter the help first thing in the morning. She was changing the sheets in the guest bedroom when she heard Emma's voice calling for her. The little girl appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her hair tangled from sleep. "Mom's in a really bad mood," Emma whispered. "She and Dad had another fight after I went to bed last night. I heard them." Grace's heart ached for this child who spent her nights listening to her parents destroy each other. "Come here, sweetheart. Let me brush your hair." They sat together on the guest bed, Grace gently working through the tangles while Emma talked about a book she was reading for school. These moments were dangerous. Grace knew she should maintain distance, should send Emma back to her room. But she was weak when it came to this little girl. Had always been weak. "Grace, can I ask you something?" Emma twisted around to look at her. "Do you think my parents love each other?" "That's not really my place to say, honey. But you see them every day? You must notice things." Emma's brown eyes, so serious for a 7-year-old, searched Grace's face. "I think they hate each other. I think the only reason they're still together is because of me, and that makes it my fault they're unhappy." "Oh, Emma." Grace pulled the little girl into a hug, unable to stop herself. "No, their relationship is about them, not you. You are not responsible for your parents' choices." "Then, why do I feel so bad all the time? Why does it feel like everything would be better if I wasn't here?" Grace held her tighter, tears pricking her own eyes. This beautiful child, feeling unwanted in her own home, and Grace was powerless to truly help her. "You are wanted, Emma. You are loved. Your father adores you. But my mother doesn't." Grace couldn't lie to her. They both knew the truth. Victoria saw Emma as an accessory, a reflection of herself rather than an individual person. When Emma didn't behave the way Victoria wanted, didn't excel in the activities Victoria chose, didn't smile on command for Victoria's friends, she became a disappointment rather than a daughter. "Some people have trouble showing love," Grace said carefully. "That doesn't mean they don't feel it." Emma didn't look convinced, but she nodded and hugged Grace once more before heading back to her room to get dressed for school. Grace sat on the guest bed for a long moment, trying to compose herself. This was exactly what she had feared when she took this job. She had thought she could observe from a distance, could ensure Emma was safe and cared for without becoming emotionally involved. But you couldn't be around a child every day, couldn't witness their pain and confusion and loneliness without your heart becoming tangled up with theirs. Grace finished the guest room and moved on to Emma's bathroom. She was scrubbing the sink when Victoria appeared in the doorway, perfectly made up despite it being barely 9:30 in the morning. "I need to talk to you about Emma," Victoria said without preamble. Grace straightened, turning to face her employer. Yes, ma'am. She's becoming too attached to you. It's inappropriate. You're the housekeeper, not her nanny, not her friend, and certainly not her family. I need you to maintain better boundaries. I've always been professional, Mrs. Morrison. Really? Because I've noticed you spending quite a bit of time with her. Helping with homework, brushing her hair, having little conversations. That needs to stop. Grace bit back the retort that rose to her lips. That maybe if Victoria spent more time with her own daughter, Emma wouldn't seek comfort from the housekeeper. That maybe Emma needed someone to actually listen to her, to care about her feelings, to make her feel valued. Instead, Grace said simply, I understand. Do you? Because Emma asked me this morning if you could come to her dance recital. Do you know how that made me feel? Having my daughter prefer the help to her own mother? I never encouraged that, Mrs. Morrison. Didn't you? Or maybe you enjoy having my daughter's affection. Maybe it makes you feel important, being needed by a child who doesn't know any better. Victoria's voice was cold, cruel. Let me be very clear, Grace. Your job is to clean this house. That's it. If I see you spending time with Emma beyond what's absolutely necessary, we'll need to find a new housekeeper. Am I understood? Yes, ma'am. Good. Victoria turned to leave, then stopped. And Grace? Emma already has a mother. She doesn't need another one. After Victoria left, Grace stood in the bathroom, trembling with suppressed emotion. Anger, yes, but also pain. Because Victoria was right about one thing. Grace did enjoy Emma's affection, did treasure those moments of connection, but not for the reasons Victoria assumed. Grace looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. She saw a 58-year-old black woman in a housekeeper's uniform, graying hair pulled back in a practical bun, lines of worry and grief etched into her face. She saw someone who had made choices she could never take back. Someone who had given up everything for reasons that seemed right at the time, but grew more questionable with every passing year. The school bus came at 10 for Emma's half-day program. Grace watched from the upstairs window as the little girl climbed aboard, her backpack almost bigger than she was. Emma turned and waved at the house before disappearing inside the bus. Grace waved back even though she knew Emma couldn't see her. The house felt emptier after Emma left. Even Victoria's oppressive presence couldn't fill the void. Grace threw herself into her work, scrubbing floors that didn't need scrubbing, organizing closets that were already organized. Anything to keep her mind occupied and her hands busy. Around noon, Victoria left for another one of her endless social obligations. A charity luncheon this time, where rich women would nibble salads and write checks to causes they'd forget about by evening. Grace had served at enough of Victoria's home events to know how it worked. Compassion as performance, kindness as status symbol. Alone in the house, Grace allowed herself to cry. She went to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and let the tears flow. Tears for Emma, growing up in a home without real warmth. Tears for herself, trapped in a situation of her own making. Tears for all the years lost, all the moments she could never get back. She was still crying when she heard a key in the front door. Grace quickly wiped her face, assuming Victoria had forgotten something. But it was James who appeared in the kitchen, looking surprised to see her there. Grace, are you all right? I'm fine, sir. Just some allergies. She turned away, embarrassed to be caught in such a vulnerable moment. James didn't buy the lie. He set down his briefcase and crossed to where she stood. What happened? Did Victoria say something to you? It's nothing, Mr. Morrison. Really, it's clearly not nothing. Please, talk to me. His voice was kind, concerned. It broke something in Grace. Your wife is right, Grace said, her voice rough with emotion. I've been inappropriate with Emma. I've let her get too close, and now she's attached to me in ways that aren't healthy. I should have maintained better boundaries from the start. Inappropriate. Grace, you've shown my daughter more genuine affection and care in 3 years than her own mother has shown in 7. If that's inappropriate, then I wish more people in her life were inappropriate. James ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Victoria gave you a hard time, didn't she? She was just setting clear expectations for my role in this household. Let me guess. She told you to stay away from Emma, to stop being so friendly, to remember your place. James's jaw tightened. She did the same thing to Emma's last nanny, the one before you. Couldn't stand that Emma loved someone else more than her. Grace didn't know what to say to that. It wasn't her place to comment on the marriage or Victoria's parenting. But James seemed to need to talk, and she was there, so he continued. I stay in this marriage for Emma, he said quietly. I know that probably sounds cowardly, but the truth is I'm terrified of what a divorce would do to her. Victoria would fight for custody just out of spite, and Emma would end up being used as a weapon. At least this way, I'm here every day. I can protect her a little. Mr. Morrison, you really shouldn't be telling me these things. Why not? You're the only person in this house who actually cares about what happens to my daughter. The only person I can trust. He looked at her intently. I see how you are with Emma. How patient you are, how kind. You really do care about her, don't you? Of course I do, Grace whispered. She's a wonderful child. She is. And she deserves better than this. James gestured around the expensive kitchen, the mansion beyond. All this money, all this stuff, and she's still just a lonely little girl who wants someone to love her. It breaks my heart. They stood there in the kitchen, employer and employee, connected by their shared concern for a 7-year-old girl. The moment felt dangerous, too intimate, like they were crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. Grace stepped back, creating physical distance. I should get back to work, she said. Grace, wait. I want you to know that whatever Victoria said, your job is safe. You're important to this family, to Emma. I won't let her push you out. Thank you, sir. But maybe your wife is right. Maybe I have been too familiar with Emma. It's not fair to her, getting attached to someone who's just hired help. You're not just hired help. You're... James trailed off, seeming to struggle with how to finish that sentence. You're someone Emma trusts. Someone she feels safe with. Don't you understand how rare and precious that is? Grace did understand. Better than James could possibly know. But understanding didn't change the reality of their situation. Didn't change the rules about appropriate boundaries between staff and family. Didn't change the fact that she was hiding something that, if revealed, would destroy everyone in this house. James went back to work, apologizing for the emotional outburst. Grace was left alone again with her thoughts and her guilty conscience. She moved through the rest of her afternoon tasks like a robot, her mind elsewhere. When the school bus dropped Emma off at 2:30, Grace heard her come in but didn't go to greet her as she usually would. She stayed in the laundry room, folding towels, trying to follow Victoria's instructions about maintaining distance. But Emma found her anyway. Grace, I got an A on my book report, the one you helped me practice reading for. Grace smiled despite herself. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. Emma bounced on her toes, excited to share her achievement. Then, she noticed Grace's swollen eyes, the redness that makeup couldn't quite hide. Were you crying? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I just have allergies. You're lying. Adults always say that when they don't want to tell kids the truth. Emma crossed her arms. Did my mom say something mean to you? Emma. She did, didn't she? She's always mean to people. Especially people who are nice to me. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I hate her sometimes. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but it's true. Grace knelt down so they were eye level. Don't say that, Emma. She's your mother. So? That doesn't mean she's nice. That doesn't mean I have to like her. Emma wiped angrily at her tears. Why can't you be my mom instead? You're nicer. You actually listen when I talk. You don't yell at me for every little thing. The words pierced Grace's heart like arrows. If only Emma knew how much Grace wished things could be different. How many nights Grace lay awake imagining a world where she could openly love this child, could be in her life as more than just the housekeeper. The world doesn't work that way, sweetheart, Grace said gently. You have a mother and a father, and I'm just someone who works for your family. But you care about me. I know you do. I can tell. I do care about you. Very much. But that doesn't change what I am or what your mother is. Emma hugged her fiercely. I don't care what my mom says. I'm going to keep loving you anyway. She can't stop me. Grace held the little girl, knowing she should pull away, knowing Victoria would be furious if she saw them like this. But for just this moment, Grace allowed herself to feel what it was like to hold her child, to be loved and needed and wanted. The front door opened. Victoria's voice called out, sharp and demanding. Emma, where are you? Emma pulled back reluctantly. I have to go. But Grace, thank you for everything. She ran off, leaving Grace alone in the laundry room, her heart full of emotions she had no right to feel. Through the walls, she could hear Victoria interrogating Emma about her day, criticizing her hair, her outfit, something about her posture. Emma's responses grew quieter, more subdued. Grace finished the laundry and started on dinner preparation. Chicken marsala tonight, one of James's favorites. As she worked, she thought about what Emma had said, about hating her mother sometimes, about wanting Grace to be her mom instead. Those words should have scared Grace, should have made her realize she had let things go too far. But, instead, they filled her with a fierce, protective love that was becoming harder and harder to deny. She was standing at the stove, stirring the marsala sauce, when she felt it. That prickle on the back of her neck that meant someone was watching her. She turned to find Victoria in the doorway, arms crossed, face cold. "I thought I made myself clear this morning. Ma'am, I saw you, hugging Emma in the laundry room, letting her cry all over you like you're her mother." Victoria's voice was venomous. "What part of maintain your boundaries did you not understand?" Emma was upset. "I was comforting her. That's not your job. Your job is to clean my house and cook my meals and stay out of family matters. Emma has a mother. She doesn't need you pretending to be one." Grace turned off the stove burner, giving herself a moment to control her temper. "I apologize, Mrs. Morrison. It won't happen again. It better not. Because if I see one more inappropriate interaction between you and my daughter, you're fired. I don't care what my husband says. This is my house, and I won't have the help overstepping their place." Victoria swept out, leaving Grace shaking with anger. Not at the threat to her job, but at the callous way Victoria talked about Emma. As if the little girl's feelings didn't matter. As if needing comfort and affection was somehow wrong. Grace finished cooking dinner in silence, her mind racing. She couldn't keep doing this. Couldn't keep working in this house, seeing Emma every day, loving her from a distance that was far too close. It was torture for both of them. But the thought of leaving, of never seeing Emma again, was even worse. At least here, Grace could make sure Emma was okay, could provide some small measure of comfort and stability. If she left, Emma would be alone with Victoria's coldness and James's well-meaning but inadequate protection. Dinner was the usual tense affair. Victoria nitpicked Emma's table manners. James tried to mediate. Emma ate in silence, occasionally glancing toward the kitchen where Grace was cleaning up, looking for reassurance that Grace couldn't give without making things worse. After dinner, Grace gathered her things to leave. As she headed for the service entrance, she heard rapid footsteps behind her. Emma appeared, still in her school clothes, holding something in her hand. "I made this for you in art class," Emma whispered, pressing a folded piece of paper into Grace's hand. "Don't open it until you get home, okay?" Before Grace could respond, Emma hugged her quickly and ran back upstairs. Grace slipped the paper into her purse and left, her heart heavy with foreboding. Thursday morning dawned clear and bright, as if the previous day's rain had never happened. Grace arrived at the Morrison house with a sense of determination. She had spent most of the night thinking, and she had made a decision. She would talk to James privately, explain that she needed to leave, that her presence was causing more harm than good. She would give 2 weeks' notice, help them find a replacement, and then she would disappear from Emma's life before the attachment became even deeper. It was the right thing to do, the responsible thing, the only thing, really, that made sense given the circumstances. Grace tried not to think about how much it would hurt Emma, tried not to imagine the little girl's face when she learned Grace was leaving, tried not to feel like she was abandoning her child for the second time. But when Grace let herself into the house that morning, she walked into chaos. Victoria's voice rang through the house, shrill and angry. Grace heard breaking glass, then James's voice trying to calm her down. More shouting, more breaking. Grace stood frozen in the kitchen, unsure whether to leave or stay or make her presence known. Then, she heard Emma crying upstairs and all hesitation vanished. She moved quickly through the house, following the sound to Emma's bedroom. The little girl was curled up in her closet, hands over her ears, sobbing. Grace didn't think. She just went to her, gathered her up, and held her while Emma clung to her like a lifeline. "They're fighting about me," Emma choked out between sobs. "I heard Mom say I've ruined her life, that she wishes I'd never been born." Grace's blood turned to ice. "She didn't mean that, sweetheart. People say things they don't mean when they're angry." Yes, she did. She said it before. Emma looked up at Grace with eyes far too old for her 7 years. She hates me. My own mother hates me. Oh, Emma. Grace held her closer, rocking her gently. I'm so sorry. They sat like that for a long time, while the fight raged downstairs. Grace could hear things being thrown, doors slamming, Victoria's voice reaching a pitch that suggested she was completely out of control. James's responses were too quiet to make out, but his tone was sharp, no longer attempting to placate. Finally, Emma's sobs quieted to hiccups. Grace wiped her face with gentle hands and tried to smile. Do you want to stay home from school today? I can make you breakfast, and we can watch something on TV. Emma nodded, still clinging to Grace's shirt. They made their way carefully downstairs, trying to avoid the battle that had moved to the living room. The kitchen was mercifully empty. Grace settled Emma at the counter with a glass of orange juice and began making pancakes, Emma's favorite. As Grace cooked, Emma talked in a small, broken voice about all the times her mother had said cruel things. About being called stupid and clumsy and disappointing. About never being good enough, no matter how hard she tried. About overhearing Victoria tell her friends that having a child had ruined her figure and her social life. Grace listened, her heart breaking, her anger at Victoria growing with every word. This was abuse, clear and simple. Not physical, but emotional abuse that was leaving scars just as deep on this innocent child. And James, for all his good intentions, wasn't protecting Emma from it. The pancakes were almost ready when Victoria stormed into the kitchen. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, her designer clothes rumpled. She looked like she'd been through a war. When she saw Emma sitting at the counter, her face contorted with rage. Why aren't you dressed for school? Why are you just sitting there eating? Victoria turned on Grace. And why are you making her pancakes? She's not supposed to have sugar in the mornings. Mrs. Morrison, Emma was very upset. You thought? You thought? Who gave you permission to think? Who gave you permission to make decisions about my daughter? Victoria's voice rose with each word. Emma shrank back on her stool. Grace moved slightly, positioning herself between the little girl and her mother. The gesture was subtle, but Victoria noticed, and it enraged her further. Get out of my way. Emma, go to your room and get dressed. Now, let her finish breakfast first, Grace said quietly. She needs to eat. The room went silent. Grace had never directly contradicted Victoria before, had never questioned her authority or her parenting. The moment hung there, dangerous and electric. What did you just say to me? Victoria's voice was deadly quiet now, which was somehow worse than the shouting. I said let her finish her breakfast. She's been crying, and she's upset, and she needs. The slap came so fast Grace didn't see it coming. Victoria's palm connected with Grace's face with a crack that echoed through the kitchen. Grace's head snapped to the side, her cheek immediately beginning to burn. Emma screamed, "Don't you ever tell me what my daughter needs." Victoria was screaming now. You're the help. You're nobody. You don't get to decide anything in this house. Grace touched her burning cheek, tasting blood where her tooth had cut the inside of her mouth. She looked at Victoria, this woman who had everything and appreciated nothing. This woman who had the child Grace had given up and treated her like garbage. And something inside Grace snapped. At least I actually care about her, Grace said, her voice shaking but clear. At least I see her as a person instead of an inconvenience. Victoria raised her hand to slap Grace again, but James's voice cut through the moment. Victoria, stop. He was standing in the doorway, his face white with shock and anger. Behind him, Grace could see the devastation of the living room, broken glass, and overturned furniture, evidence of Victoria's rampage. Did you just hit her? James's voice was dangerously quiet. Did you just assault our employee? She was insubordinate. She was telling me how to parent my own daughter. Your daughter? James laughed bitterly. When have you ever acted like a parent? When have you ever put Emma's needs before your own? Don't you dare. Don't you dare take her side over mine. Victoria pointed at Grace. This woman has poisoned my daughter against me. She's turned Emma into someone who disrespects me, who prefers a housekeeper to her own mother. Maybe Emma prefers Grace because Grace actually shows her affection, because Grace doesn't tell her she's worthless, because Grace doesn't scream at her for existing. James was yelling now too. Emma was still crying, watching her parents tear into each other. Grace wanted to take her away from this, wanted to shield her from the ugliness, but she was frozen in place, her cheek throbbing, her heart pounding. I want her fired, Victoria said. Right now? I want her out of this house. No. James's response was immediate and firm. Absolutely not. This is my house too, James. And I will not have someone who disrespects me working here. She doesn't disrespect you, Victoria. She just refuses to pretend that your treatment of Emma is acceptable. And you can't stand it because it forces you to look at yourself. Victoria's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying that you're a terrible mother. I've been trying not to admit it for 7 years, but it's true. You resent Emma. You always have. And the only reason you're still here is because you like the lifestyle my money provides. How dare you? It's true, and you know it. You married me for my money and my family name. You never wanted children. You made that clear enough. But I wanted Emma, so you went along with it because you thought it would make you look better, make you more acceptable to society. And then you spent the next 7 years punishing her for existing. The words hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Grace could see the truth of them hit Victoria, could see her face go through a series of expressions: shock, denial, and, finally, cold rage. Get out, Victoria said to James. Get out of this house. This is my house. My family's house. If anyone's leaving, it's you. Fine. Then, I'm taking Emma with me. Like hell you are. James moved to stand near Emma, protective. You're not taking her anywhere. Victoria's laugh was sharp and mean. You think you can stop me? I'm her mother. Courts always side with mothers. I'll tell them you're abusive, that you're having an affair, that you're an unfit father. I'll destroy you, James. And I'll make sure you never see Emma again. Mom, please. Emma's small voice cut through the adult fury. Please don't fight. I'll be good. I'll be better. I promise. The sight of her daughter begging broke something in the room. James's face crumpled. Even Victoria seemed taken aback. And Grace, watching this child blame herself for her parents' dysfunction, felt a rage so powerful it overrode every bit of common sense she possessed. She shouldn't have to be good, Grace said. She shouldn't have to earn your love. She's 7 years old. She's innocent. And she deserves parents who love her unconditionally, not two selfish people using her as a weapon against each other. I told you to stay out of this, Victoria hissed. I can't. Not anymore. Not when you're destroying that child. Grace moved to Emma, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. She's not a possession. She's not a pawn. She's a little girl who needs love and stability and parents who actually put her needs first. Oh, and you think you know what she needs? You, the housekeeper? You think you have some special insight into my daughter? Victoria's eyes were wild now. Tell me, Grace, what exactly makes you such an expert on parenting? Your daughter is dead, you said. So what do you know about raising a child? The words were calculated to wound, and they did. But they also opened a door that Grace had kept locked for 25 years. She looked at Emma, this beautiful child who she loved more than life itself, and made a decision that would change everything. My daughter isn't dead, Grace said quietly. The room went silent. Everyone stared at her. James spoke first. What? I lied about that. My daughter is very much alive. Grace took a deep breath, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her chest. She's standing right here in this kitchen. The words seemed to hang in the air, impossible, incomprehensible. Victoria laughed, a sharp bark of disbelief. What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? But James was staring at Grace with dawning understanding. No, it's not possible. Grace looked at him, saw the pieces coming together in his mind, saw the exact moment he figured it out. I'm sorry, James. I'm so sorry. Will someone tell me what's going on? Victoria demanded. James's voice was barely a whisper. Emma's adoption, the private arrangement, the birth mother who gave her up and never wanted to be contacted. He looked at Grace with horror and betrayal. It was you. You're Emma's biological mother. Emma gasped. Victoria's face went white. And Grace, after 25 years of secrets and lies, finally told the truth. I was young, 17. I got pregnant by my high school boyfriend. We were in love, or thought we were. But when I told him, he disappeared. And my parents, they were religious, strict. They were ashamed of me. Grace's voice shook, but she kept going. They sent me away to live with my aunt in another state until the baby was born. They said I had to give her up, that I had no way to support a child, that adoption was the only choice. She looked at Emma, who was staring at her with wide, uncomprehending eyes. I held you for 5 minutes after you were born. They let me hold you for 5 minutes. You were so tiny, so perfect. And then, they took you away. This is insane, Victoria said, but her voice lacked conviction. You're lying. You're making this up for attention or sympathy, or I'm not lying. When I gave Emma up for adoption, I went through a private agency. The couple who adopted her, they wanted a closed adoption. No contact, no information shared. But I begged them to let me know she was okay, to let me know she was loved and safe. Grace looked at James. Your mother agreed. She sent me pictures once a year. Just pictures, no information about where you lived or who you were. Just proof that my baby was alive and well. James sat down heavily on one of the kitchen stools. My mother knew. She knew all along and never told me. She was trying to protect everyone. When she died 2 years ago, the pictures stopped. But she had mentioned in her last letter that you lived in Beverly Hills. That wasn't much to go on, but I was desperate. I needed to know Emma was okay. So I started applying for housekeeping positions in the area, hoping, praying I'd somehow find her. And you found us, James said flatly. You've been here for 3 years, watching my daughter, and you never said anything. I couldn't. The adoption was closed. I had signed away my rights. I had no claim to her. But I needed to see her, to know she was safe, to be near her, even if I could never tell her the truth. Victoria had been silent through all of this, processing. Now she spoke, her voice cold and calculating. You took this job under false pretenses. You've been lying to us for 3 years. You've been inserting yourself into our family, into Emma's life, with no right to be here. I know it was wrong. But I gave birth to her. I carried her for 9 months. I felt her move inside me. I held her and fed her and loved her for 5 minutes before they ripped her away. And for 25 years I've lived with that loss, wondering if I made the right choice, wondering if she was happy, if she was loved. Grace's voice broke. And then I found her here, in this house, with parents who fight constantly, and a mother who tells her she wishes she'd never been born. And I couldn't leave. I couldn't abandon her again. Emma had been silent through all of this, her face pale, her body shaking. Now she spoke in a small voice. You're my real mom? Grace's heart shattered. I gave birth to you, sweetheart. But Victoria is your mother. She's the one who raised you. But she doesn't love me. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You said so yourself. She wishes I'd never been born. I never said that. Victoria protested, but the lie was weak. You did. This morning. I heard you. Emma turned to Grace. You love me, don't you? I can tell. I've always been able to tell. Oh, Emma. Grace knelt down in front of her. I've loved you from the moment I knew you existed. I loved you when you were inside me. I loved you when they took you away. I've loved you every single day for 7 years, even when I couldn't be with you. Then, why did you give me away? Why didn't you keep me? The question every adoptee asked, the question Grace had dreaded for 25 years. Because I was young and scared and I had no money, no support, no way to give you the life I thought you deserved. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought you'd be better off with parents who could give you everything I couldn't. But I don't want everything. I just want someone who loves me. Emma threw herself into Grace's arms, sobbing. Grace held her, this child she had dreamed about for 7 years, finally, able to openly show the love she'd been hiding for so long. Over Emma's head, she saw James and Victoria staring at them, their faces showing very different emotions. James looked devastated, betrayed, angry, but also understanding. He had seen how much Emma needed Grace. He had witnessed Victoria's cruelty. Some part of him had to understand why Grace had done what she did. But Victoria's face showed only fury. This is kidnapping. This is fraud. I'm calling the police. No, Emma cried. Please don't. Please. Emma, this woman lied to us. She's been manipulating us for years. She has no right to be near you. She's been nicer to me than you ever have. Emma screamed. The outburst shocked everyone, including Emma herself. She listens to me. She cares about my feelings. She makes me feel like I matter. You just yell at me and tell me I'm not good enough. I'm your mother, Victoria said, but there was uncertainty in her voice now. You're not my mother. You're just the person who adopted me because Dad wanted a kid. You never wanted me. But Grace did. Grace does. Emma turned to James. Daddy, please. Don't let them take Grace away. Please. James looked at his daughter, at the woman who had given birth to her, at his wife who had just been exposed for the cold, unloving mother she truly was. He ran his hands through his hair, clearly overwhelmed. I need time to think, he said finally. This is too much to process right now. There's nothing to process, Victoria snapped. She lied to us. She wormed her way into our home under false pretenses. She's been stalking our daughter for 3 years. This is illegal. It's sick. Is it? James looked at his wife. Or is it a mother desperately trying to make sure her child was okay? A mother who gave up everything because she thought it was best for her baby, only to find that baby in a home where she wasn't loved the way she deserved. Don't you dare turn this around on me. Don't you dare make her the victim here. Who is the victim, Victoria? Is it you, with your designer clothes, and your country club membership, and your complete lack of maternal instinct? Is it me, stuck in a loveless marriage trying to protect my daughter? Or is it Emma, a 7-year-old girl who just found out that the one person who's shown her genuine affection is her biological mother, and that her adoptive mother has been emotionally abusing her for her entire life? The truth of James's words hung in the air. Victoria opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She had no defense because there was no defense. She had been exposed, her cruelty and coldness laid bare for everyone to see. I want a divorce, she said finally. I want out of this family. Fine. But Emma stays with me. She can stay with both of you for all I care. Victoria grabbed her purse from the counter. I'm done. I'm done with this house, this marriage, and this ungrateful child who clearly doesn't appreciate anything I've done for her. What have you done for her? Grace asked quietly. Besides make her feel unwanted and unloved? Victoria's response was to throw her purse at Grace. It missed, hitting the wall instead, and spilling its contents across the floor. Then, Victoria stormed out, her heels clicking on the marble, the front door slamming behind her so hard that the windows shook. In the silence that followed, the three of them stood in the kitchen, James, Grace, and Emma. A family, but not in any traditional sense. A father who had just lost his wife. A biological mother who had lived a lie. And a little girl trying to understand a world that had just turned completely upside down. Emma was still in Grace's arms. James looked at them, and Grace saw the pain in his eyes. The betrayal. But also something else. Understanding, maybe. Or at least the beginning of it. We need to talk, James said. All of us. But not right now. Right now, Emma needs stability and calm. Grace, I'm not firing you. I should, probably. You lied to me, manipulated this situation. But Emma needs you, and I won't take that away from her. Not today. Thank you, Grace whispered. Don't thank me yet. We have a lot to figure out. Legally, ethically, practically. This situation is complicated in ways I can't even begin to process. He looked at Emma. Princess, why don't you go upstairs and change out of your pajamas? Grace, and I need to talk. Emma looked between them nervously. You're not going to send Grace away, are you? Not today. I promise. But I need you to give us some privacy, okay? After Emma reluctantly went upstairs, James and Grace faced each other across the kitchen. The same kitchen where Grace had cooked thousands of meals. Where she had watched Emma grow. Where she had loved her daughter from a distance that was far too close, and yet never close enough. Why didn't you tell me? James asked. When you realized we were Emma's adoptive parents, why didn't you say something? Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd send me away. Afraid I'd lose the only connection to my daughter I'd ever had. Afraid of exactly what just happened. Grace met his eyes. I know it was wrong. I know I should have been honest from the start. But, James, I've spent 7 years wondering about her. 7 years of pictures once a year, no context, no information. 7 years of hoping she was loved and safe. And when I found her here, saw how Victoria treated her, I couldn't leave. I couldn't abandon her to that. You should have told me. I would have. I don't know what I would have done, but you should have given me the chance. Would you have let me stay? Would you have let me be part of her life? James was silent for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, he shook his head. Probably not. The adoption was closed for a reason. My mother said the birth mother was young, that it was best for everyone if there was no contact. I would have respected that. Exactly. And Emma would have continued living with a mother who resented her existence. So you took matters into your own hands. Decided you knew better than everyone else what Emma needed. James's voice was hard. That's not your call to make, Grace. Emma has parents. Or had parents. Whatever. You gave up that right when you signed the adoption papers. The words stung because they were true. Grace had signed away her parental rights. Had agreed to a closed adoption. Everything she had done since was a violation of that agreement, legally and ethically questionable at best. I know, Grace said. I know I had no right. But, tell me honestly, James. Look at how Victoria treated Emma, and tell me I was wrong to want to be here. Tell me I was wrong to want to make sure she was okay. James couldn't. They both knew it. Victoria's behavior had been inexcusable. Emma had been emotionally neglected and abused. Grace's presence, however, obtained, had been one of the few positive forces in the little girl's life. What happens now? Grace asked. I don't know. I really don't know. The rest of Thursday passed in a strange, tense quiet. Victoria didn't return, and James spent most of the day on the phone with lawyers. Grace stayed because Emma refused to let her leave, clinging to her with a desperation that broke Grace's heart. They sat together in the living room, Grace holding Emma while the little girl cried, and asked questions that Grace had no good answers for. Did you think about me? Before you found me? Emma asked at one point. Every single day, sweetheart. Every single day for 7 years. What did you think about? Grace stroked Emma's hair, choosing her words carefully. I wondered if you were happy, if you were healthy, if your parents loved you the way you deserved to be loved. I wondered what you looked like, what your voice sounded like, what made you laugh. I wondered if you ever thought about me. I used to pretend I had a different mom sometimes, Emma admitted quietly. I thought maybe my real mom was nice and kind and would love me. I guess I was kind of right. Your adoptive mother is your real mother, Emma. She's the one who raised you. But she doesn't want me. She said so. Grace tightened her arms around Emma. People say things in anger that they don't mean. She meant it. I know she did. I've always known she didn't really want me. Emma looked up at Grace with those serious brown eyes. Do you want me? More than anything in this world. Then, can I live with you? Can you be my mom for real? The question shattered what was left of Grace's composure. Oh, honey, it's not that simple. There are laws, rules. You have a father who loves you very much. And I gave up my parental rights when I gave you up for adoption. I can't just take you back. But you're my mom. My real, actual birth mom. Doesn't that count for something? It does. It counts for everything to me. But, legally, I have no rights to you. James is your father. Victoria is still legally your mother, even if she leaves. They're the ones who get to make decisions about your life. That's not fair. No, it's not. But that's how the law works. Emma was quiet for a long time after that. Her small body curled against Grace's. Outside, the California sun shone bright and indifferent, while inside the Morrison mansion, 3 lives hung in balance. James emerged from his office around dinner time, looking exhausted. He found Grace and Emma still on the couch, Emma asleep in Grace's arms. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching them. Grace could see him noticing the similarities she had always been afraid someone would see. The shape of Emma's face, the curve of her mouth, the way her hair fell. With the truth revealed, the resemblance seemed obvious. I've been talking to my lawyer, James said quietly, not wanting to wake Emma. This situation is legally complex. I understand if you need me to leave, Grace said. I'll go if that's what's best for Emma. That's just it. I don't know what's best for Emma anymore. I thought I was giving her a good life. A stable home, good schools, everything she could need. But I was blind to how Victoria was treating her. Or maybe I didn't want to see it. James sat down heavily in one of the expensive chairs. My lawyer says that if Victoria files for divorce, which seems likely at this point, custody will be an issue. Victoria could claim that I allowed an inappropriate relationship between Emma and someone with no legal right to be near her. I would never hurt Emma. I know that. But courts don't care about intentions. They care about facts and laws. And the fact is, you lied your way into this house. You've been here under false pretenses for 3 years. A judge might see that as concerning, regardless of your motivations. Grace felt fear clench her stomach. What are you saying? I'm saying that this situation could blow up in ways that hurt Emma most of all. If Victoria decides to be vindictive, if she brings up your deception in court, it could impact my custody case. The judge might question my judgment in keeping you employed once I learn the truth. Then, fire me. I'll leave right now if it protects Emma. But that's the other side of the equation. Emma has bonded with you. Strongly. My lawyer says that if we suddenly cut you out of her life entirely, especially right after this revelation, it could be seen as emotionally harmful to Emma. Courts consider the child's best interest, and Emma clearly wants you in her life. Grace looked down at the sleeping child in her arms. So what do we do? I don't know yet. My lawyer is researching the options. In the meantime, he advised that we maintain the status quo as much as possible. You continue working here, but we need clear boundaries. And we need to consider what's best for Emma long term. I never meant to complicate things this way. I believe you. I'm angry, yes. I feel betrayed and manipulated. But I also understand why you did it. If I'd given up a child and later found her being treated the way Victoria treats Emma, I'd want to protect her too. James ran his hands over his face. The person I'm really angry at is my mother. She knew. She knew all along and never told me. If she had just said something, we could have handled this differently from the start. She was trying to protect everyone. By creating this mess? By letting you live a lie for 3 years? By keeping me in the dark about my own daughter's biological mother? James shook his head. I loved my mother, but this was wrong. So wrong. They sat in silence for a while, two people bound together by their love for the same child, trying to navigate an impossible situation. Emma stirred in Grace's arms, blinking awake. Is Mom coming back? She asked sleepily. I don't know, Princess, James answered honestly. She was very upset when she left. I hope she doesn't come back, Emma said with a child's brutal honesty. Things are better when she's not here. James winced but didn't contradict her. Because it was true. The house felt lighter without Victoria's constant criticism and tension. Even in the midst of this crisis, there was a sense of relief that she was gone. The evening passed in a strange sort of domesticity. Grace made dinner while Emma did homework at the kitchen counter, and James worked on his laptop nearby. It felt almost normal, like a real family instead of the broken pieces they actually were. After Emma went to bed, James and Grace sat at the kitchen table with coffee, finally, able to talk openly. Tell me about when you were pregnant, James said. Tell me about Emma's first few months in this world. So Grace did. She told him about being 17 and terrified. About her boyfriend disappearing when she told him she was pregnant. About her parents' shame and anger. About being sent away to her aunt's house in Arizona, hidden from everyone they knew. I was alone for most of the pregnancy, Grace said. My aunt was kind, but she was also very clear that I was giving the baby up. There was no discussion, no consideration of other options. I was too young, too poor, too unprepared. Adoption was presented as the only responsible choice. Did you want to keep her? I didn't know what I wanted. I was a child myself. But when they put Emma in my arms, when I looked at her tiny face, I knew that I loved her. That I would always love her, no matter what happened next. But you still gave her up. I was 17 years old with no money, no support, no education beyond high school. What kind of life could I have given her? Living in poverty, struggling to survive, unable to provide the opportunities she deserved. Grace's voice cracked. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought love meant putting her needs before my wants. And now? Do you still think it was the right thing? Grace was quiet for a long time. I don't know. I see the opportunities you've given her, the education, the experiences. But I also see the emotional neglect, the damage Victoria has done. If I'd kept her, she would have grown up poor, but she would have grown up loved. I can't say which would have been better. James absorbed this, staring into his coffee cup. When my wife and I decided to adopt, I thought we were giving a child a better life. I never considered that we might be taking a child from a mother who wanted her. I chose it. I signed the papers. I'm the one who gave her up. But did you really have a choice? You were young, pressured, told that adoption was the only responsible option. That's not really a choice, is it? James looked at her. I've been thinking about this all day. About how adoption is presented as this beautiful thing, bringing families together. But it's also separating families. taking children from mothers who might have kept them if they'd had better support. I can't change the past. No. But we can shape the future. We can decide how to move forward from here. James leaned forward. Here's what I'm thinking. Victoria is going to file for divorce. That's clear. And I'm going to fight for full custody of Emma. Based on her behavior, her lack of maternal instinct, the emotional abuse, I think I can win. My lawyer agrees. That's good. Emma should be with you. But Emma also needs you. That's become very clear. So here's my proposal. You continue to work here, but in an expanded role. Not just housekeeper, but also helping care for Emma. With proper boundaries and full transparency this time. No more secrets. Grace's heart leaped at the possibility. You'd let me stay? Let me be part of her life. For Emma's sake. She's already lost one mother today, even if Victoria wasn't much of a mother to begin with. I won't take you away from her too. But, Grace, this only works if we're honest going forward. No more lies, no more hidden agendas. If you're going to be in Emma's life, it has to be open and above board. I understand. And I agree. No more secrets. There's something else we need to discuss. Eventually, as Emma gets older, she's going to want to know more about you. About her biological father, her extended family, her genetic history. Are you prepared to share that information? Grace nodded. Emma's father was a boy named Marcus. We were both 17. When I told him I was pregnant, he disappeared. I never heard from him again. I don't know where he is now or what became of him. And your family? My parents passed away years ago. I have a younger sister in Texas, but we're not close. She disagreed with my decision to give Emma up. Thought I should have fought harder to keep her. We haven't spoken in over 10 years. No other children? No. I never married. Never had another relationship that lasted. I think part of me was always waiting, hoping I'd find Emma again someday. Grace smiled sadly. I built my whole life around the hole she left. Every decision I made, every job I took, every place I lived was somehow connected to the possibility of finding her. That's a lonely way to live. It was. But it brought me here, to this moment. And, despite everything, I can't regret that. They talked late into the night, James asking questions about Grace's life, Grace sharing the stories she'd kept locked inside for so long. It was strange, this honesty after years of careful deception. But it was also freeing, not having to hide anymore. Around midnight, they heard a noise upstairs. Both of them rushed to Emma's room to find her sitting up in bed, crying from a nightmare. Grace started to hang back, unsure of her place. But James gestured her forward. It's okay. She needs both of us right now. They sat on either side of Emma's bed, Grace holding one hand and James holding the other, while Emma cried and told them about her dream. In it, Grace had disappeared, and Emma couldn't find her, no matter how hard she looked. I'm not going anywhere, Grace promised. Your father and I have talked, and I'm going to stay. Really? Emma looked between them hopefully. Really, James confirmed. But things are going to be different from now on. No more secrets, no more pretending. We're going to figure out how to make this work, the three of us. What about Mom? Is she coming back? Probably not to live here, James said gently. Your mother and I are going to get divorced. But that doesn't mean she doesn't love you. Yes, it does. Emma's voice was flat, certain. She doesn't love me. She never did. But that's okay because Grace does. Right, Grace? You love me. With all my heart, sweetheart. Then, I don't need Mom. I have you and Daddy. That's enough. The simple statement hung in the air. Emma, at 7 years old, had already written off her adoptive mother. Grace wasn't sure if that was healthy or concerning or just realistic given Victoria's behavior. But that was a problem for another day. They got Emma settled back to sleep, both of them staying until her breathing evened out. In the hallway outside Emma's room, James turned to Grace. This is going to be complicated. The divorce, the custody battle, figuring out your role in all this. Victoria isn't going to go quietly, and she's going to use this situation against me if she can. I know. I'm sorry for putting you in this position. Stop apologizing. What's done is done. Now we just have to deal with it. James smiled tiredly. For what it's worth, I'm glad Emma has you. She deserves to have someone in her life who genuinely loves her. She has you too. I know. But I work too much. I'm too focused on business. You see her in ways I don't. You understand her in ways I can't. James looked back at Emma's closed door. Maybe that's the biological connection. Maybe that's just who you are. Either way, Emma needs you. So thank you for being here, even if the path that brought you here was less than straightforward. After James went to bed, Grace sat in the kitchen for a long time, processing the day's events. 24 hours ago, she had been the housekeeper with a secret. Now she was Emma's biological mother, acknowledged and accepted, with a chance to be part of her daughter's life openly. It felt like a dream. The kind of dream Grace had given up on years ago. And yet here she was, in the Morrison house at midnight, drinking tea in a kitchen she'd cleaned 1,000 times, with permission to love her daughter without hiding it. But, along with the joy came fear. Fear of Victoria's revenge. Fear of the legal complications. Fear of somehow hurting Emma despite her best intentions. And, above all, fear that this fragile new arrangement would somehow fall apart, leaving everyone worse off than before. Grace's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it, her blood running cold as she read. You think you've won? You think you can steal my husband and my daughter? I'll destroy you. I'll expose you for the fraud you are. Enjoy this while it lasts because I'm coming for all of you. Victoria. It had to be. Grace deleted the message, but its threat lingered. Victoria wasn't going to just walk away. She was going to fight, and she was going to fight dirty. Grace set down her phone and looked around the kitchen. This house, this family, this life she'd inserted herself into was about to become a battlefield. And Emma, innocent Emma who had already been through so much, was going to be caught in the crossfire. For a moment, Grace considered leaving, walking away before things got worse, protecting Emma from the ugliness that was surely coming. But then, she remembered the little girl upstairs, the daughter who had cried at the thought of Grace disappearing. The daughter who finally knew her biological mother loved her. Grace couldn't abandon Emma. Not again. Whatever storm was coming, they would face it together. Grace, James, and Emma against Victoria's fury and the legal system and society's judgment. It wouldn't be easy. It might not even be possible. But Grace had spent 7 years wondering about her daughter, 3 years loving her from a distance, and 1 day openly claiming her. She wasn't going to give that up without a fight. The next morning, Friday, Grace arrived at the house early as always. James was already up, looking like he hadn't slept. Emma bounded down the stairs, happier than Grace had seen her in weeks despite everything that had happened. Grace, you're really here. Emma threw herself into Grace's arms. I told you I would be, sweetheart. I know, but I thought maybe I dreamed it. That you were my birth mom, and you loved me, and you weren't leaving. Grace held her tight. Not a dream. All real. Good. Emma pulled back and looked seriously at Grace. Can I call you Mom? The question froze both Grace and James. They exchanged glances, unsure how to navigate this minefield. Grace knelt down to Emma's level. How about we take things slow? You can keep calling me Grace for now, and maybe later, when things are more settled, we can talk about names. Okay. Emma looked disappointed, but nodded. Okay. But, in my head, I'm calling you Mom. Is that all right? In your head, you can call me anything you want. The morning routine was different now. Instead of Grace working in the background while Emma got ready for school, they moved through it together. Grace made breakfast while Emma told her about a project she was working on. James joined them, and, for a few moments, they were almost like a normal family. But, normal was shattered when the doorbell rang at 8:30. James answered it to find a process server with divorce papers. Victoria was making her first move. James took the papers with a grim expression and closed the door. He scanned them quickly, his face darkening with each page. She's claiming adultery, he said flatly. She's claiming that I've been having an affair with you, Grace. And that's why I'm defending you. That's ridiculous. We've never. Grace trailed off, horrified. She's also claiming that you've been mentally manipulating Emma, turning her against her mother. And she's requesting a psychological evaluation of Emma to determine if she's been harmed by your presence in the house. Emma, who had been listening from the kitchen doorway, went pale. What does that mean? It means your mother is going to make this as difficult as possible, James said, trying to keep his voice calm for Emma's sake. But we're going to fight back. My lawyer is already preparing our response. Can she take me away from you? Emma's voice was small, frightened. No, princess. I won't let that happen. But, Grace could see the worry in James's eyes. Victoria was playing dirty, and she had resources. This was going to be a long, ugly battle. The process server left, and James immediately called his lawyer. Grace sent Emma to get ready for school, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy in the chaos. But when Emma came back downstairs, she looked scared. I don't want to go to school. What if Mom comes there? What if she takes me? James assured her that wouldn't happen, that the school had been notified to only release Emma to him or to authorized individuals. But Emma remained nervous, clinging to both Grace and James until the last possible minute. After the school bus took Emma away, James and Grace sat down to strategize. The lawyer was coming by later that afternoon to discuss the case. In the meantime, they needed to prepare for what was coming. Victoria knows your secret could be used against me, James said. She'll argue that I showed poor judgment in keeping you employed after learning you'd lied about who you were, that I prioritized my attraction to you over Emma's well-being. We need to tell the truth, that I'm Emma's biological mother. That changes everything, does it? Or does it make things worse? A judge might see it as even more inappropriate that I allowed a biological mother to maintain contact with her child after a closed adoption. But Emma needs me. Any psychologist will see that. Maybe. Or maybe they'll see a child who's been manipulated into rejecting her adoptive mother in favor of her biological mother. Victoria will spin it that way, you can be sure of that. Grace felt panic rising. Everything she'd feared was coming true. Her presence in Emma's life was being used as a weapon, and Emma was the one who would suffer most. Maybe I should leave, Grace said quietly. Maybe that's the only way to protect Emma and your custody case. And break Emma's heart? After everything she's been through? No. We fight this together. James's voice was firm. Emma deserves to have you in her life. We just need to find a legal way to make that happen. The lawyer arrived that afternoon with news both good and bad. The good news was that Victoria's adultery claim would be easy to disprove. The bad news was that Grace's deception about her identity was indeed problematic from a legal standpoint. Closed adoptions exist for a reason, the lawyer explained. To protect all parties involved. By seeking out the family and inserting yourself into their lives under false pretenses, you violated the spirit of that agreement, even if you didn't technically break any laws. So what do? James asked. We emphasize the emotional abuse Victoria inflicted on Emma. We show that Grace's presence was beneficial to Emma's well-being. We argue that the biological connection, now that it's known, should be acknowledged rather than hidden. And we request a modification to the adoption agreement to allow Grace to have a formal role in Emma's life. Can we do that? Modify a closed adoption. It's rare, but it's possible if we can prove it's in the child's best interest. And given Victoria's behavior and Emma's clear attachment to Grace, we might have a case. They spent hours going over strategy, documenting Victoria's behavior, preparing for the custody battle ahead. Through it all, Grace felt a strange mix of hope and dread. Hope that she might actually get to be part of Emma's life legally. Dread that the fight to get there would hurt Emma in ways they couldn't yet imagine. When Emma came home from school, she immediately sensed the tension. What's wrong? What happened? James and Grace exchanged glances. They had agreed to be honest with Emma, to include her in age-appropriate ways. So they sat her down and explained that her mother had filed for divorce and was going to fight for custody. But she doesn't even want me, Emma said, confused. She said I ruined her life. People say things they don't mean when they're angry, James said, though he didn't sound convinced. No, she meant it. Emma looked between them. She's only doing this to hurt you, isn't she? And Grace. She doesn't want me. She just doesn't want you to have me. The sad truth was that Emma was probably right. This wasn't about Victoria's maternal love. It was about pride, revenge, and control. Emma was just another possession to fight over in the dissolution of the Morrison marriage. That night, as Grace tucked Emma into bed, the little girl asked the question that had clearly been bothering her all day. If you're my real mom, why did the people at the hospital give me to the Morrisons instead of to you? Grace took a deep breath. Because I signed papers saying they could. Papers that said I was giving up my rights to raise you so that another family could. But why? Didn't you want to keep me? Oh, sweetheart. I wanted to keep you more than anything. But I was very young, and I didn't have money or a way to take care of you. I thought giving you to a family who could provide for you was the best choice. But you were wrong. The family you gave me to didn't love me. The words were like knives. I'm so sorry, Emma. I thought I was doing the right thing. It's okay. Emma hugged Grace tightly. You found me again. That's what matters. As Grace left Emma's room, she found James waiting in the hallway. He'd obviously heard the conversation. She's taking this better than I expected, he said quietly. She's been preparing for Victoria to reject her for years. In some ways, this is just confirmation of what she already knew. That's heartbreaking. Yes, it is. Grace looked back at Emma's closed door. I gave her up to give her a better life. And instead I gave her to someone who made her feel unwanted. How do I live with that? You can't change the past, Grace. You can only be here for her now. And what if the court says I can't be? What if they say my presence is harmful, that I need to stay away? Then we fight. We appeal. We do whatever it takes. James met her eyes. I meant what I said. Emma deserves to have you in her life. We'll find a way to make it legal and right. Over the weekend, Victoria's lawyer sent over a list of demands. She wanted the house, half of James's assets, and alternating custody of Emma. The custody demand was clearly just for leverage, a bargaining chip to get what she really wanted, money. James's lawyer advised him not to engage yet, to let Victoria think she had the upper hand while they built their case. So the weekend passed in strange limbo, the three of them trying to enjoy their time together while knowing a storm was gathering. On Sunday afternoon, Emma asked if they could bake cookies together. Grace agreed, and they spent the afternoon in the kitchen, Emma on a stool helping measure ingredients while James worked nearby on his laptop. It was domestic and sweet and normal, and Grace tried not to think about how fragile this moment was. As they pulled the first batch of cookies from the oven, Emma turned to Grace with a serious expression. If the judge says you have to go away, will you? Grace's heart clenched. The judge isn't going to say that, sweetheart. But if he does, will you leave me again? Emma. Grace knelt down, taking Emma's flour-covered hands in her own. I gave you up once because I thought it was best for you. I was wrong about that. I will never make that mistake again. If a judge says I have to stay away from you, I'll fight it. I'll appeal. I'll do everything legally possible to stay in your life. I promise you that. But what if nothing works? What if they make you go? Grace looked into Emma's worried eyes and made a promise she hoped she could keep. Then, I'll wait. I'll wait until you're 18 and old enough to make your own choices. And the day you turn 18, I'll be there, ready to be part of your life if you still want me. Emma threw her arms around Grace's neck. I'll always want you. You're my mom. My real mom. Over Emma's shoulder, Grace saw James watching them, his expression unreadable. Later, after Emma went to bed, he brought it up. You promised her you'd fight to stay in her life. Are you prepared for what that might mean? What do you mean? This custody battle could get ugly. Victoria might drag your past through the mud. She might bring up things you'd rather keep private. She might paint you as a stalker, a manipulator, someone dangerous. Are you ready for that? Grace thought about it. About her quiet life before Emma. About the anonymity she'd maintained for years. All of that was about to be destroyed if this went to court. Her deepest secret, her greatest shame and joy, would become public record. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings, psychological evaluations, and tense negotiations. Victoria had hired one of Los Angeles's most aggressive divorce lawyers, a woman with a reputation for destroying opposing parties in court. She was determined to make James pay, both financially and emotionally, and Grace was her primary weapon. The custody evaluation was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. A court-appointed psychologist would interview Emma, James, Victoria, and Grace separately to determine what custody arrangement would be in Emma's best interest. Grace was terrified. This stranger would hold Emma's future in their hands based on a few hours of interviews. The night before the evaluation, Grace couldn't sleep. She lay in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling, going over every possible question and how she should answer. Should she downplay her love for Emma to seem less threatening? Or be completely honest about her feelings and her mistakes? Around 2 in the morning, her phone buzzed. A text from James. Can't sleep either. Are you ready for tomorrow? Grace typed back. No. But I'll do my best. That's all any of us can do. Emma's counting on us. Grace knew that. The weight of Emma's trust was both a gift and a burden. The little girl had such faith that the adults in her life would protect her, would fight for her, would make sure she ended up somewhere safe and loved. Grace couldn't let her down. The next morning, Grace arrived at the Morrison house to find Emma anxious and withdrawn. She hadn't slept well either. James looked exhausted, his expensive suit unable to hide the strain of the past few weeks. "The psychologist is coming here?" Emma asked for the third time. "Yes, princess. She'll talk to each of us separately. Just be honest with her. Tell her how you feel. Even if it makes Mom look bad." James hesitated, then nodded. "Even then, the truth is what matters." Dr. Sarah Chun arrived at 10 o'clock, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. She set up in the living room and started with James. Grace and Emma waited in the kitchen, trying to distract themselves with a card game. "What if she says I have to live with Mom?" Emma whispered. "What if she says you can't see me anymore, Grace?" "That won't happen." "But it could. I heard Dad on the phone with his lawyer. He said the court might not like that you lied about who you were." Grace put down her cards and took Emma's hands. "Listen to me, sweetheart. No matter what happens with the court, no matter what any judge or psychologist says, nothing can change the fact that I'm your mother. I gave birth to you. I love you. And when you're old enough, when you can make your own choices, I'll be here. Always. Promise. I promise." James's interview lasted an hour. When he emerged, he looked drained, but gave them a weak thumbs up. "She seems fair. Just answer honestly." Victoria arrived next, dressed impeccably as always, her face a mask of composed grief. She played the role of the wronged wife and mother perfectly, Grace was sure. But she couldn't know what Victoria said in her interview. The psychologist's face gave nothing away when she emerged and asked for Emma. Emma looked terrified. Grace wanted to go with her, to protect her from whatever questions were coming. But she could only squeeze Emma's hand and whisper, "Just tell the truth." Emma's interview lasted longer than the others, almost 2 hours. Grace paced the kitchen, imagining all the ways this could go wrong. What if Emma said the wrong thing? What if her clear preference for Grace over Victoria was seen as evidence of manipulation? What if the psychologist decided that the healthiest thing was for Grace to disappear from Emma's life entirely? When Emma finally emerged, she was crying. Dr. Chin looked sympathetic, but professional. "Emma did very well. She's a brave little girl." James immediately went to Emma, pulling her into a hug. "What's wrong, princess? What happened?" She asked about Mom. "About the mean things Mom says. And I had to tell her everything. And it made me feel bad, like I was betraying her even though she's mean to me." Emma sobbed into James's shirt. "You did the right thing, sweetheart. The truth is important." Dr. Chun turned to Grace. "Mrs. Williams? I'm ready for you now." Grace followed the psychologist into the living room, her heart pounding. Dr. Chun gestured to a chair and sat across from her with a notepad. "Let's start at the beginning," Dr. Chun said. "Tell me about giving Emma up for adoption." So Grace told her story again. The teenage pregnancy, the pressure from her parents, the brief 5 minutes with her newborn daughter before signing the papers, the years of wondering and hoping, the photographs from James's mother, the desperate search that led her to the Morrison house. "And you took the job as housekeeper under false pretenses," Dr. Chin said. Not a question, but a statement. "Yes, I lied about who I was because I knew if I told the truth, I'd never get to see her, never get to know if she was safe and happy." "And what did you find when you got here?" Grace chose her words carefully. "I found a beautiful little girl living in a house with every material advantage, but very little emotional warmth. I found a mother who seemed to resent her daughter's existence. And I found myself falling in love with her all over again." "Did you plan to reveal your identity?" "No, never. I thought I could just watch over her from a distance, make sure she was okay, and that would be enough. But it wasn't enough. No, because the more I got to know Emma, the more I saw how much she was hurting, how desperate she was for someone to love her unconditionally. And I couldn't watch her suffer and not do more. So you overstepped professional boundaries." "Yes, I became more than just the housekeeper. I became someone Emma could talk to, confide in, trust. I knew it was wrong professionally, but it felt right for Emma." Dr. Chin made notes, her face unreadable. "Mrs. Morrison claims you deliberately turned Emma against her, that you manipulated a young child into rejecting her adoptive mother. That's not true. I never said anything negative about Victoria to Emma. I didn't need to. Emma could see for herself how her mother treated her. I just offered her the love and acceptance she wasn't getting elsewhere. Children need boundaries, structure, discipline. Love alone isn't always enough. I agree. But love is the foundation. You can't build a healthy relationship with a child based only on control and criticism. Emma needed to know she was valued, that her feelings mattered, that she was loved just for being herself. Victoria never gave her that. And you think you can? A woman who gave her up as an infant and then lied her way into her life. The words stung, but they were fair questions. Grace took a deep breath. I made mistakes. Huge mistakes. Giving Emma up was the biggest regret of my life. Lying to the Morrisons was wrong. I own all of that. But I love Emma with everything I have. I would do anything to protect her, to help her grow into the amazing person she's meant to be. And if you think removing me from her life would be best for her, I'll respect that decision. But it would break both our hearts. Dr. Chin studied her for a long moment. Tell me what you envision for Emma's future. What role do you see yourself playing? I don't know. I've never dared to imagine it because it seemed impossible. But if I could choose, I'd want to be part of her life openly. Not replacing Victoria, because Emma deserves to have a relationship with her adoptive mother if Victoria is willing to work on herself. But as an additional source of love and support, as someone Emma knows she can always count on. And if Victoria refuses to work on herself, if she continues to be emotionally abusive, then I want to help protect Emma from that. I want to be part of the team ensuring she grows up feeling valued and loved. They talked for another hour, Dr. Chun probing into Grace's life, her mental health, her stability, her intentions. Grace answered everything honestly, holding nothing back. She had come too far to lie now. Finally, Dr. Chun closed her notebook. Thank you for your honesty, Mrs. Williams. I'll be submitting my report to the court next week. Can you tell me what you're going to recommend? No, but I will say this. Emma is a remarkable child who clearly loves you very much. That's something I'll be taking into consideration. After Dr. Chen left, the four of them sat in the kitchen, emotionally exhausted. Victoria had disappeared immediately after her interview, not bothering to say goodbye to Emma. The little girl was quiet, processing everything. How long until we know? James asked. The report should be done in a week. Then, there'll be a hearing where both sides present their case. Could be another month before a final decision. A month. Emma's voice was small. I have to wait a whole month to know if I can keep Grace. I'm not going anywhere for now, sweetheart, Grace assured her. Your dad and I are both here. But that night, after Emma went to bed, James pulled Grace aside. We need to talk about what happens if the report goes against us. Against us how? If Dr. Chun recommends that you not have contact with Emma. If she sides with Victoria's claim that your presence is harmful. Grace felt sick. Do you think that's likely? I don't know. You were honest about your deception, which could work for or against us. And Victoria can be very convincing when she wants to be. James ran his hand through his hair. We need to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. The week waiting for the report was torture. Grace continued her work at the Morrison house, but everything felt fragile, temporary. Victoria's lawyer kept sending demands and accusations, trying to rattle them. And Emma grew increasingly anxious, clinging to both Grace and James with a desperation that broke Grace's heart. On the sixth day, Grace's phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Mrs. Williams? This is Dr. Chun. I wanted to give you a heads up before my report is filed tomorrow. I don't normally do this, but I thought you deserved to know. Grace's heart stopped. What is it? My recommendation is going to be that you maintain a presence in Emma's life, but with clear legal boundaries and oversight. I'm also recommending that Mr. Morrison receive primary physical custody, with Mrs. Morrison having supervised visitation until she completes a parenting course and therapy. Grace sat down hard, relief washing over her. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. My recommendation isn't binding. The judge will make the final call. But I wanted you to know that I believe Emma benefits from your presence. Her attachment to you is genuine and healthy, not a result of manipulation. And, frankly, Mrs. Morrison's behavior toward Emma during the evaluation was concerning. What did she say? I can't share details. But let's just say her version of events didn't match Emma's or anyone else's. And her lack of insight into Emma's emotional needs was troubling. After Dr. Chin hung up, Grace called James immediately. He was ecstatic, but cautious. This is good news, but Victoria will fight it. She'll claim Dr. Chun was biased, that we somehow influenced her. Let her claim whatever she wants. We have the truth on our side. The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, Victoria's behavior became increasingly erratic. She showed up at the house unannounced, demanding to see Emma. James called the police, and Victoria was escorted off the property, screaming threats about what she'd do in court. She posted on social media about being a wronged mother, painting herself as the victim of a cheating husband and a manipulative housekeeper. Some of her friends rallied around her. Others, who had witnessed her treatment of Emma over the years, quietly reached out to James offering to testify on his behalf. The day before the hearing, Grace sat Emma down for a serious talk. Tomorrow, a judge is going to decide where you're going to live and who gets to be part of your life. Whatever happens, I need you to know something. What? I love you. I have loved you since before you were born. I loved you when I gave you up. I loved you through all the years we were apart. I love you now. And I will love you for the rest of my life. No matter what the judge says, that will never change. Emma started crying. I love you too. I wish you hadn't given me up. I wish you'd been my mom from the start. So do I, sweetheart. So do I. They held each other and cried, mourning the 7 years they'd lost, hoping desperately for the chance to make up for lost time. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and wood and serious-faced people in suits. Emma had to wait outside the courtroom with a court-appointed guardian while the adults argued over her future. Grace hated that Emma was excluded from decisions about her own life. But that's how the system worked. Victoria arrived with her lawyer, looking elegant and composed. She didn't even glance at Emma, which Grace noticed the guardian noticed too. James's lawyer had prepared them well. They had witnesses, documentation of Victoria's behavior, Emma's own statements, and Dr. Chin's report. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Victoria's lawyer painted Grace as a stalker and a liar, someone who had manipulated her way into a family for her own selfish reasons. She claimed that Grace's presence had damaged Emma's relationship with her adoptive mother, had confused the child about who her real family was. James's lawyer countered with evidence of Victoria's emotional abuse, her neglect, her own admission during the evaluation that she had never really wanted children. Multiple witnesses testified about Victoria's treatment of Emma, about the little girl's fear of her own mother, about the visible change in Emma when she was around Grace. Dr. Chin's report was entered into evidence, recommending that Emma live primarily with James, and that Grace be allowed supervised visitation with the potential for unsupervised visits as the situation stabilized. She also recommended that Victoria's time with Emma be supervised until she completed parenting classes and demonstrated genuine change. Finally, the judge called a recess to review everything. Grace, James, and Victoria sat in the hallway, not speaking, while inside the courtroom their futures were being decided. Emma appeared with her guardian. Is it over? Can I go home? Not yet, princess, James said gently. The judge is still deciding. I want to talk to the judge. I want to tell him I want to live with you and see Grace. You already told Dr. Chun. She told the judge everything you said. But I want to say it myself. I'm old enough. I should get to say what I want. The guardian overheard this and disappeared back into the courtroom. 5 minutes later, she emerged and gestured for Emma to follow. The judge wants to speak with you in chambers. Emma looked terrified but determined. She followed the guardian, and the adults were left waiting again, this time with the added anxiety of not knowing what Emma was saying or how the judge was reacting. 20 minutes later, Emma emerged, looking relieved. He was nice. He asked me where I wanted to live and who I wanted to see. I told him the truth. What did you say? Victoria demanded. I said I wanted to live with Dad, and that I wanted to keep seeing Grace because she's my birth mom and she loves me. And I said, Emma hesitated, then looked directly at Victoria. I said that I don't feel safe with you, that you're mean to me and you make me feel bad about myself. Victoria's face went white, then red with fury. You ungrateful little. Mrs. Morrison. The guardian stepped between Victoria and Emma. I suggest you control yourself. James pulled Emma close, and Grace moved protectively near both of them. Victoria's lawyer grabbed her client's arm, pulling her back, whispering urgently in her ear. They waited another hour. Grace held Emma, who had fallen asleep against her shoulder, exhausted from the emotional toll of the day. James paced. Victoria sat rigid and furious, her lawyer occasionally checking her phone. Finally, the bailiff called them back into the courtroom. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, surveyed them all before speaking. I've reviewed all the evidence, heard testimony from multiple witnesses, read Dr. Chin's evaluation, and spoken with Emma directly. This is a complex situation with no perfect solutions. However, my primary concern is Emma's well-being and best interests. Grace held her breath. Based on everything I've seen and heard, I'm granting primary physical custody to Mr. Morrison. Mrs. Morrison will have supervised visitation twice a month until she completes a court-ordered parenting program and demonstrates meaningful change in her behavior toward Emma. Victoria started to protest, but her lawyer silenced her. As for Mrs. Williams, the judge continued, looking directly at Grace. This is an unusual situation. You acted deceptively in entering this family, which normally would disqualify you from having any role in the child's life. However, it's clear that Emma has formed a strong, healthy attachment to you. Dr. Chin's evaluation indicates that your presence has been beneficial to Emma's emotional well-being. Grace's heart pounded so hard she thought everyone in the courtroom must be able to hear it. Therefore, I'm ordering a modification to the adoption agreement. Mrs. Williams will be granted supervised visitation rights to take place at the Morrison residence or other approved locations, initially twice a week for 4 hours each visit. After 6 months, if these visits continue to be in Emma's best interest, we'll revisit the arrangement with the possibility of unsupervised visits and potentially expanded rights. Grace couldn't stop the tears that flowed down her face. James squeezed her hand. Emma, understanding that this meant she got to keep both of them, started crying too. Additionally, the judge said, I'm ordering family therapy for all parties. Emma needs support in navigating these complex relationships. Mr. Morrison and Mrs. Morrison need help co-parenting effectively. And Mrs. Williams needs guidance on how to be part of Emma's life in a healthy, appropriate way. The judge's gavel came down. This court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Emma threw herself into Grace's arms. You get to stay? You really get to stay. I really get to stay, Grace confirmed, holding her daughter tight. James hugged them both. We did it. We actually did it. Victoria stormed past them without a word, her lawyer following, already on the phone presumably appealing the decision. But Grace didn't care. Let Victoria appeal. Let her fight. Grace had what mattered, the legal right to be part of Emma's life. The next few months were an adjustment. Grace officially resigned as housekeeper and instead came to the Morrison house for her scheduled visits with Emma. At first it was awkward, this formalized arrangement after years of living and working there. But, slowly, they found a new rhythm. James hired a new housekeeper, an older woman named Martha who was kind but professional and had no secret connections to the family. Grace and Martha got along well, and sometimes they'd chat while Grace helped Emma with homework or played games with her. The family therapy sessions were difficult but productive. The therapist helped Emma process the complicated truth about her adoption, about having two mothers who loved her in very different ways. She helped James deal with his guilt over not protecting Emma from Victoria's emotional abuse sooner. And she helped Grace understand healthy boundaries and how to be part of Emma's life without overstepping or trying to replace Victoria. Victoria attended her mandated parenting classes, but made little effort to actually change. Her supervised visits with Emma were tense and uncomfortable. Emma was polite, but distant, and Victoria seemed more interested in proving to the supervisor that she was a good mother than actually connecting with Emma. After 6 months, the court reviewed Grace's visitation arrangement. The supervisor reported that Grace was respectful of boundaries, genuinely focused on Emma's well-being, and had developed a healthy relationship with her daughter. The judge granted unsupervised visits and expanded Grace's time with Emma to include overnight stays twice a month. Emma was overjoyed. She helped Grace decorate the spare bedroom in her small apartment, picking out bedding and posters and stuffed animals. It wasn't fancy like her room at the Morrison house, but it was hers in a different way, a space where she could be with her birth mother without schedules or supervision. A year after the custody hearing, Victoria finally gave up fighting. She signed away her parental rights, accepting a large financial settlement in exchange. She moved to New York, started a new life, and rarely contacted Emma except for obligatory birthday and Christmas cards. Emma was sad about it at first. Despite everything, Victoria was still the only mother she'd known for 7 years. But as time passed, and Grace filled that maternal role more completely, Emma's grief faded. She had what she'd always needed, a mother who genuinely loved her. James and Grace developed an unusual but effective co-parenting relationship. He was Emma's legal father and primary custodian. Grace was Emma's biological mother with significant visitation rights. They communicated daily about Emma's needs, attended her school events together, and made major decisions jointly. People in their social circle gossiped, of course. The scandal of the housekeeper who turned out to be the daughter's biological mother was too juicy to ignore. But James didn't care about the gossip, and Grace had never cared about society's opinion. All that mattered was Emma. On Emma's 8th birthday, they had a small celebration at the Morrison house. Just the three of them, Martha the housekeeper, and a few of Emma's school friends. Grace made the birthday cake from scratch, chocolate with chocolate frosting, Emma's favorite. As Emma blew out the candles, Grace watched her daughter's face glow in the candlelight and felt a peace she'd never known before. For 7 years, she had wondered about her daughter. For 3 years, she had loved her from a distance. And now, finally, she got to be Emma's mother openly, legally, with no more secrets or lies. It wasn't the way she'd imagined motherhood when she was 17 and pregnant. It wasn't traditional or simple or easy, but it was real. Emma knew the truth about where she came from. She knew she was loved by both her fathers and both her mothers, even if one of those mothers had chosen to walk away. Later that night, after the party was over and Emma's friends had gone home, the three of them sat in the living room. Emma was between James and Grace on the couch, exhausted but happy, still wearing her party hat. "This was the best birthday ever," Emma declared, "because I had both my parents here." James and Grace exchanged a look over her head. Parents, plural, a recognition of their unconventional but genuine family. "We'll always be here for you, princess," James promised. "Both of us." "I know," Emma said confidently. "I'm lucky. Some kids only have one mom or one dad. I have a dad and 2 moms. Well, one mom who left and one mom who came back. But still." Grace hugged her daughter close. "I'll never leave you again. I promise you that." "Good. Because I need you." Emma yawned. "Both of you." After Emma went to bed, Grace prepared to leave for the night. It wasn't one of her custody nights, so she'd be going back to her own apartment. But she didn't mind anymore. She had tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. She had a lifetime of days ahead with her daughter. At the door, James stopped her. "Grace, I never properly thanked you." "For what?" "For fighting for Emma. For refusing to give up on her. For being brave enough to tell the truth even when it could have destroyed everything." He smiled. "You gave Emma up once because you thought it was best for her. And you fought to be part of her life again for the same reason. Everything you do is for her. She's my daughter. She'll always be my daughter. I know. And I'm grateful that she has you. That we both have you." They hugged. This man and woman who had been brought together by a child, who had fought together to protect that child, who would continue to raise that child together in their own unique way. As Grace walked to her car, she looked up at Emma's bedroom window. The light was still on, and she could see Emma's silhouette moving around, probably getting ready for bed. Her daughter, her beautiful, brave, wonderful daughter who she had given birth to and given up and found again and fought for and won the right to love openly. It had taken 25 years, 3 years of deception, a dramatic revelation, a custody battle, and a complete restructuring of what family meant. But Grace had her daughter back, not in the way she'd once dreamed, but in a way that was real and legal and permanent. As she drove through the Beverly Hills streets, past the mansions and the manicured lawns and the expensive cars, Grace thought about that teenage girl in Arizona 25 years ago. The scared, pregnant 17-year-old who thought giving her baby away was the only choice. If she could go back and talk to that girl, what would she say? Would she tell her to fight harder to keep Emma? Or would she tell her that the path ahead, though painful and complicated, would eventually lead to this moment? To having her daughter in her life, to being able to love her openly, to being called mom? Grace didn't know. The past was complicated, full of choices made with limited information and under pressure. She couldn't change it, could only accept it and move forward. What she did know was this: love was stronger than law. It was stronger than time and distance and closed adoptions and social expectations. It was stronger than the mistakes of the past and the complications of the present. She had loved Emma from the moment she felt her move inside her. She had loved her through the 5 minutes she held her as a newborn. She had loved her through 7 years of absence. She had loved her through 3 years of secrecy. And she would love her through every day ahead, through all the birthdays and holidays and ordinary moments that make up a life. Grace pulled into the parking lot of her apartment building and sat in her car for a moment, looking at Emma's drawing on her dashboard. The one Emma had made in 2nd grade, before anyone knew the truth. 2 figures holding hands. Grace and me, best friends forever. Emma had been 7 when she drew that. Now she was 8, growing up so fast, becoming more herself every day. A smart, kind, funny girl who was learning to trust again, to feel secure, to believe that the people who said they loved her actually meant it. In a few hours, Grace would wake up and start another day. Maybe she'd have breakfast with Emma before school. Maybe she'd attend Emma's dance recital, or help with homework, or just sit and talk about nothing important. Maybe she'd coordinate with James about summer plans, or discuss how to handle Emma's questions about Victoria. Whatever the day brought, Grace would face it not as the housekeeper with a secret, not as the birth mother trying to stay invisible, but as Emma's mom. One of them, anyway. Part of an unconventional family that worked because everyone involved put Emma first. The slap that Victoria had delivered in the kitchen had seemed like the end of the world at the time. It had exposed everything Grace had been hiding, threatened everything she'd carefully built. But, in retrospect, it had been a beginning. The beginning of truth. The beginning of real family. The beginning of Emma knowing she was loved not by the woman who had adopted her for show, but by the woman who had given birth to her and the woman who refused to give up on her no matter what. Grace got out of her car and walked to her apartment, already counting down the hours until she'd see Emma again. Tomorrow was one of her custody days. They'd have breakfast together, and Emma would tell her about school, and Grace would braid her hair the way she liked, and they'd just be together. Mother and daughter. Finally, openly, legally, permanently. And that was worth every secret, every lie, every moment of fear and doubt. Emma was worth everything. Grace had given her up once because she thought it was love, and she had fought to be part of her life again for the same reason. Because real love, the kind that lasts, doesn't give up. It finds a way. 25 years after signing away her parental rights, Grace had finally found her way back to her daughter. The path had been twisted and complicated and nothing like what she'd imagined. But she was here, and Emma was there, and they had the rest of their lives to make up for lost time. As Grace fell asleep that night, she smiled thinking about the little girl who had transformed from a tiny baby she'd held for 5 minutes into a beautiful 8-year-old who called her mom. The shocking truth that the rich woman had discovered when her husband revealed Grace's identity had turned out to be the greatest gift of all. Because sometimes the truth, no matter how shocking, no matter how complicated, sets everyone free. And sometimes, just sometimes, mothers and daughters find their way back to each other, no matter how many years or miles or mistakes stand between them. Grace had found her way back, and she was never letting go again. Yes, she said finally. I'm ready. Because Emma is worth it. She's worth everything. James nodded slowly. Okay then. We fight. Together. For Emma. They shook hands on it. An odd formal gesture that somehow felt right. They were partners now, united in their goal to protect and care for the little girl upstairs. Not a romantic partnership, but something perhaps more important, a parenting partnership. As Grace prepared to leave for the night, she paused at the service entrance, the same door she'd come through every morning for 3 years. But tomorrow, when she came back, she wouldn't be sneaking in as the housekeeper with a secret. She would be walking in as Emma's biological mother, acknowledged and fighting for her place in her daughter's life. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was everything Grace had dreamed of and everything she'd feared. But most of all, it was real. No more hiding. No more pretending. Just the truth, messy and complicated and real. And whatever came next, whatever battles they had to fight, Grace knew one thing for certain. She wasn't facing it alone anymore. She had James fighting beside her. She had Emma loving her openly. And she had herself, finally, brave enough to claim the title she'd given up 7 years ago, mother. They stood there in the ruins of the Morrison family, two adults who loved the same child in different ways, trying to figure out how to move forward when the past had just exploded into the present. Upstairs, Emma sat on her bed, processing everything she had just learned. Her whole life had been a lie. The woman she thought was her mother didn't want her. The woman who had been the housekeeper was actually her birth mother. And the father she loved was suddenly the only stable thing in a world that had gone completely crazy. Emma picked up her phone, the one her father had given her for emergencies. She didn't call anyone. She just held it, thinking about Grace's words. "I've loved you from the moment I knew you existed." For the first time in her life, Emma felt truly wanted. And that feeling, despite all the chaos and confusion, was the most wonderful and terrifying thing she had ever experienced. On the bus ride home, Grace opened Emma's gift. It was a drawing, done in bright crayons. Two figures holding hands. One tall, one small. Above them, Emma had written in her careful second-grade handwriting, "Grace and me, best friends forever." Grace pressed the drawing to her chest and cried all the way home, knowing that tomorrow she would have to tell Emma they couldn't be friends. That Grace had to start keeping her distance for Real. That love, no matter how genuine, wasn't enough to change the reality of their situation. But first, she would treasure this drawing. This evidence that she mattered to someone. That despite all her mistakes, despite the secrets and the lies, she had made a difference in at least one life. The rain had stopped by the time Grace reached her apartment. She placed Emma's drawing on her refrigerator, next to the only other picture she allowed herself to keep. A hospital bracelet from 25 years ago. A reminder of the day she gave birth to a daughter she would never be allowed to raise. Grace sat in her dark apartment and, finally, admitted the truth she had been denying for 3 years. She hadn't taken this job just to ensure Emma was safe and cared for from a distance. She had taken it because some part of her hoped for exactly this. Hoped for connection. Hoped for love. Hoped for a chance to be, in some small way, the mother she had never been allowed to be. And now that hope was going to destroy them all. That went far beyond needing employment. And every day, every interaction with Emma, every moment of connection with this beautiful little girl, made her question whether she had made the right choice all those years ago. The bus arrived, and Grace climbed aboard, heading back to her small world, away from the mansion and its troubles. But she carried it all with her. The weight of her secret. The pain of watching Emma grow up from a distance that was far too close, and yet somehow not close enough. The knowledge that one day, the truth would come out, and when it did, it would destroy everything. She just hadn't known that day would come so soon. That tomorrow, everything would change. That one moment of connection between her and Emma would trigger Victoria's rage. That one slap would set in motion a revelation that had been 25 years in the making. As the bus carried her through the city streets, Grace closed her eyes and prayed for strength, for wisdom, for the courage to face whatever was coming, because something in her bones told her that the careful balance she had maintained was about to shatter. And she was right.